What's going on YouTube? It is the Trash Master bringing you another Vanguard deck profile. This time I will be bringing you my Deity deck. Now this deck has actually made a few improvements and changes since the extra booster, and after testing it, as you'll see, I'll link the video where I show what this deck can actually do in the description. But yeah, this deck can actually really pose a threat to the current meta right now. And I don't consider that anecdotal evidence either. Starting off with our starter, we have our typical V-Series starter, Deity White Tiger. What he does is, when he's placed, when you ride on him, you draw a card, and then if your opponent's grade 1 or greater, you get a quick shield to your hand. Most Nova Grappler decks don't actually care about the starter, but this one does because of a couple cards you'll see in here. Playing off on our grade 3 lineup, we play 4 Deity Azure Dragon. The obvious first ride and good boss unit of this deck. What he does is, when he's placed, you counterblast 1, draw a card, call a card from your hand to the rearguard circle, and then immediately attack the opponent's Vanguard with it. And if that unit's attack doesn't hit, it restands. Now, a couple things I do want to clarify, because I've actually had these issues come up at locals. This attack occurs during the ride phase, not the main phase. So despite what the anime says, it happens during the ride phase. Second, and I can't even believe I had this conversation, the attack is still an attack. It behaves like an attack and goes through all the other attacks. So your opponent can still guard it, hence the wording of whether it hits or not. But what's really cool about this ability is the fact that, thanks to Axel 2, you actually get to draw 2 cards when you play him, and then call 1. So you're still getting a decent amount of field advantage just for riding him, which is really good against today's Kagero heavy meta. And Link Joker, to a lesser extent Link Joker, but we'll get to that. His second ability is, when he attacks, you counterblast 1 and stand one of your other rear guards. Now, that may not seem like much, but in Standard, that's probably still one of the best rear guard restanding abilities we have on a Vanguard. Most of them are very conditional or situational, where this one is just stand 1. So yeah, Deity Azure Dragon definitely warrants the best VR for the clan award here. Next up, we play, in my opinion, the MVP of the deck, Ultra Deity Luminal Dragon. His first ability is, once per turn on Vanguard, if one of your rear guards doesn't hit during an attack, you can counterblast 1, stand it, give it 10,000, and then immediately attack again. Now, another thing I want to clarify with this, because this also came up at locals, is the fact that the rear guard that you target with this ability is the one that must attack with this ability. So you can't just give hit. Like, for example, I were to take an Azure Dragon, attack with it on rear guard. If it doesn't hit, I have to stand and attack with this one and not, like, say, another rear guard. Again, yeah, it's really weird that you see some of these people coming up with this stuff, but hey, that's what happens when you know how to play the game and other people don't. Second ability is, on Vanguard or rear guard, when another unit's attack hits, it gets plus 15,000 power. So this definitely puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, because either they have to deal with guarding the extra attacks and forcing those units to restand for another attack, or they let him hit and then this guy gets bigger. Especially since he works on rearguard circle too, so I'll show you later on down the line I'll show you another card that is basically the reason this deck can really do some nasty damage. Rounding out our grade 3 lineup, I play 2 Order card, Clear Frame Whirling Wash of Curse Cleansing. This card's actually currently commonly played in Link Joker, but Nova Grappler can actually do this, use this card pretty well too. What it does is choose one of your circles, unlock the locked card on that circle, and stand the rear guard on that circle. And if you did either of those things, you draw a card. So this card is basically just a free, less conditional Scarlet Bird, which you'll see with Brutal Jack and the extra attacks here, is definitely something that this deck needed. The draw power is nice and has actually really helped me out with a lot, and plus the extra attacks, granting you extra attacks without having to waste resources is really good. Coming in our grade 2 lineup, we play 4 Brutal Jack. Now, in every other iteration of this deck, I only played him at 3. But with the Order card and just how the meta has been shifting with a lot of Force Clans coming out, I had to start playing this card at 4. He has 3 abilities. The first one is on Vanguard or Rearguard, during your turn he gets plus 10,000 power. So if you have to ride him, then you have a 19. Whether you ride him or call him, you have a 19k beater, which can hit those force numbers pretty hard by himself. His second ability is he can't stand during your stand phase, which again, with the Order card, Scarlet Bird, and his third ability, which I'll get to, it's just not an issue. His third ability is once per turn, you can rest 2 rear guards and stand him. Which, once I get to Scarlet Bird, you'll see why that's actually not even a bad thing with this. But yeah, Brutal Jack, definitely another MVP of this deck. Next up, we play 4 Kick Kick Typhoon. Now, myself included, a lot of people, myself included, actually consider this card to be the best card in standard Nova Grappler right now. Definitely is a key player in this deck as well. What he does is auto on Vanguard or Rearguard. When he's placed on Vanguard circle or an additional Rearguard circle, he gets plus 5. One of your units gets plus 5,000 power. You can give it to himself, or you can give it to the Vanguard to help them hit force numbers if you can't boost them. Or you can give it to one of the cards you'll see later on down the line and just make this, and actually make it a half-decent threat. His second ability is on Rearguard circle. Once per turn, you can counterblast 1. If your front row is full, then you stand one of your other rear guards. Now, a couple things I'd like to point out is your front row does have to be full, including the Axel circle. So, if you have an Axel circle and it's empty, you won't be able to activate his ability. But it's very, very seldom that you will actually have an empty front row during your turn with this deck, with Azure Dragon being able to call stuff and draw cards, and just in general you saving up hand for one final turn push. Kick Kick definitely helps you get there. Rounding out our grade 2 lineup, we play 2 copies of Stylish Hustler. Now, before I would play this card as a 4 of, because this card, don't get me wrong, is actually really good. But it's seeing less play now. But what he does is, on Vanguard or Rearguard, if another one of your Rearguards is retired by an ability, you can Soul Blast 1 and return one of those cards to your hand. Now, the cool thing about it is, if, like, let's say your opponent board wipes, if you have enough soul to return all of your other rear guards, keep in mind he can't return himself. So if they retire him first, then you're kind of messed up. They kind of messed that up, but he helps you get some cards back from decks like Blade Master or Dragonic Overlord, or the upcoming Dark Irregular is going to retire a lot, so this card also really helps with that. His second ability is on rearguard. When he attacks, he gets plus 3,000 power for every card in your damage zone. So, typically when you go for your final turn push, especially in this meta, you'll have 3 to 4 damage. So, 3 damage already doubles his power. 4 damage will make him 4 damage makes him a 21k beater on his own, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Stylish Hustler, definitely something I would play. Coming up to yet another MVP of the deck, we play 4 Deity Dragon. Now, what he does is, on rearguard circle, once per turn, when your other unit attacks, if you have a grade 3 Deity Vanguard, Soul Blast 1 stand him. So, this is what I was talking about with like Kick or Azure Dragon, or even Illuminal Dragon, where you call him with Azure Dragon, attack. If he hits, he stays there, but then you just use the order card to stand him, or Scarlet Bird to stand him. Then you attack again, attack with Azure to stand him, attack again, attack with Kick, stand him, attack again, attack with something else, stand him with his own ability, and attack again. And I've honestly stolen quite a few games with this card. Yeah, so, Glaire's Dragon, definitely an MVP of this deck. It's a shame he's not a grade 2, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. Next we play 4 copies of Deity Scarlet Bird. Now what he does is, when he's placed during my main phase, I can Soul Blast 1, stand all of my other units, and then if I stood 2 or more units and Deity White Tiger is in my soul, I draw a card. So this is what I meant when I said Deity White Tiger is the starter for this deck. You have to play it that way. And with Brutal Jack, what you do is, if he's rested during your turn, you rest 2 of your other rear guards, stand him, play this guy, Soul Blast, stand the 2, draw. So he's really good. He also nets you some card advantage here and there. One thing I would like to point out is, because he said when placed during the main phase, you can't activate his ability if you call him with Azure Dragon, because Azure Dragon's ability is done during the ride phase. So there was a little point of contingency there at my locals, but yeah, I pointed that out. It's amazing how many things you learn if you actually just read the cards. Next up is 3 copies of Claydol Mechanic. You can play 4 if you want, and then take out 1 Scarlet Bird, but I found this works a little better for me in my locals. So what he does, his first ability is, when he's placed on rearguard circle, if you have 4 or less cards total in hand and rearguard, you draw a card. So he can definitely help you out in a pinch. And his second ability, which is the whole reason most people play this card, is when you counterblast, you retire him to countercharge. Now, one thing that came up during my locals when this card first came out is, the card says when you counterblast, not when you would counterblast. So, unfortunately, you can't, if you have no face-up damage, you can't use this guy's ability. So, you gotta be careful with your counterblast. He helps, but you still gotta be careful with that. Yeah, Kick Typhoon, Claydol Mechanic, definitely what I would consider to be a staple in Nova Grapplers. Rounding out our grade 1 lineup, we play 2 Unknown Adamski. Now this is a card I never actually considered playing until testing it. What he does is, when he's placed, you counterblast 1, stand 1 of your other rear guards, and then immediately attack opponent's Vanguard with it. If it doesn't hit, it restands. So this once again goes back to the combo I had with Glan's Dragon, where it would just or Brutal Jack, where it just gives him more. It just gives them more attacks and puts more pressure on your opponent. Now, I do acknowledge that damage triggers are in fact a thing, but if you can trigger the damage triggers early, you can essentially go from there and figure out exactly how you're going to go about finishing the opponent off. So it helps you play a little smarter. Now for our trigger lineup, we play 6 critical triggers. In this case I use Shining Lady and Ord Anchor because Shining Lady is cool and Ord Anchor is just the one I have access to. I have like 9 copies of this card, it's ridiculous. 6 draw trigger, which if you're playing, this is basically the only way I could justify doing this. 4 Sentinel, not much to say there. And finally, 4 heal trigger. Because this isn't God Hand, you actually play the heal trigger in this deck. Yeah, so that was my Deity deck profile. Make sure you let me know in the comments how you would change. Shout out what you would do with your own deck. Let me know how those work for you. And shout out to Danny Dang, who is most likely going to rip this deck a new asshole. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of our channel's latest videos, and like this video. Peace.